even though we need to continue working because it's very early in the morning. So I will start sharing my screen so I can start showing you what we have for today. Again, it's March the 13th, which means the fifth day of our training here at Sevam, this version, as I always say, of the TESOL methodology course, our very flexible uh, and adapted version of the course for you guys. And since I'm already talking about flexibility, remember that every time I show you the agenda, this is not like written on stone. We actually have the opportunity to make adjustments and make it fit our needs, your needs. And this is why yesterday we didn't really move a lot here. We didn't get the opportunity to have this track through showing us theoretical advance, let's say. But I think it was a very good session because now we are where we are supposed to be. So today we will be finishing part three. Keeping in mind, I always say, let's see how it goes. We can always make adjustments and the necessary arrangements for this to work out the best possible way for everybody. Then we had a very interesting conversation yesterday on learning styles and multiple intelligences, answering question, where do we stand today regarding both of them? Then we were discussing the concept of emotional intelligence and how social emotional intelligence, social emotional learning, sorry, is basically emotional intelligence in action. And as we did with learning styles and multiple intelligences, we also discussed where we stand today regarding social emotional learning. Of course, considering that learning styles and multiple intelligences are ideas that were introduced a long time ago, while social emotional learning, particularly not emotional intelligence, because we saw this is from the 1990s decade. Social emotional learning is a more recent thing, but is very important nowadays. But as we said, with healthy boundaries. So today we will get into more detail regarding meeting the needs of diverse learners and talking about teaching integrated language skills, which is really where we actually stopped yesterday. And we will also get into developing engaging activities for diverse learners because, as I said yesterday, we have been well, I'm guessing you can notice the structure this is following. As I mentioned yesterday, we are, or we first focused on the teacher's side of the story, talking about philosophy, and teaching practices, approaches. And then we talked about how students are different from cognitive aspects, even though we didn't dive deeper into it because that would be a very long conversation, uh, even a very complex discussion. But we touched on some of these topics, and then we moved on to the emotional aspect of students. And then we said that based on these ideas and these frameworks, we can move forward and start considering how to use all of these approaches, theories, and then what we know about students, even in a general sense, and how, based on these premises, we can build what is now known as a responsive and inclusive teaching. And remember, yesterday we said responsive means to respond to our students' needs and particularities and goals. This is we said that this is actually being inclusive in multicultural countries. And which is not particularly the case of Venezuela. It is not only responsive and inclusive, this is culturally and emotionally responsive and inclusive teaching. That would be, I'm guessing, the full name. So today we will continue the discussion, as I said, um, on part three, and we will finish it today, I hope. This is the last thing we saw yesterday. This is literally the same slide. It was the introduction to integrated language skills, and we used as a premise or as a motto here, as an introduction, that we are talking about teaching language as communication, not thesis, which aligns with everything we have said in the previous 4 days. Uh, in short, learners don't use skills in isolation outside the classroom. So why should we teach skills in this isolated way? Uh, therefore, we should consider that integrated tasks promote fluency, coherence, and confidence, something that is closer to what communication looks like outside the classroom. Um, also, we should consider that these integrated tasks allow for more authentic assessment and contextualized grammar practice. Miguel mentioned yesterday the importance of assessment as, in a few words, as an inherent part of teaching and learning, but not as an end in itself, meaning that it is it should be an integral part of our process, but not as a goal, to get a good grade or to pass, or not to pass, but as a way for us to gather information, to collect data useful for us to know if what's happening is happening according to our expectations as planners, as people in charge of the process, as guides of our students. And that's basically it. And this is why we will talk about assessment in the future. But again, going back to what Miguel said, this is drawing the difference between formative assessment and summative assessment. One of them, as we said, is closely connected to more traditional teaching methods and approaches that we are trying to overcome or that have been heavily criticized in recent decades. And the other one is closer to what we are looking for, what we are aiming for here, which is a more humane and constructive teaching, talking about formative assessment, not leaving things for the end, right? The product is not as important as the process, uh, to sum up. Then, yesterday, again, this is the same slide. We talked about how these integrated tasks maximize the use of time and materials, which is something I didn't mention yesterday because we were already running out of time. But this is an essential word in Venezuela, a low resource setting. Uh, we are no strangers to the social, the economic situation in the country. I think it can't even be considered a crisis because, one important part of a crisis is the idea that it can be overcome. And here, this has been happening for a while now. Um, so, considering this is the context we're in, we cannot ignore. And I think, well, I try to take this into account even when I'm planning these talks, these discussions with you. And I think I can show you something related to this today at the end of our session. Um, Going back also to my experience in the US, this was also always an interesting conversation with our in our classes because I was not the only one coming from a challenging teaching environment. We had people from Kenya, from Tanzania, from uh, Ghana, and any country you can think of coming from the global south, as they say. Um, And we had these situations when an American teacher, you can imagine that in many schools, not all of them, because nothing's perfect, right? But in many schools, they have uh, good conditions, especially furniture is in good conditions. You have good lighting, you have running water in the bathroom, you have projector, you have whiteboards, you have computers, and you have textbooks, and usually spaces that are designed specifically to be appealing for learners and help them in their learning process, um, which is not our case. So something I wanted to say about this in the end is that as much as this is useful for you as a practitioner, this is important for you to become part of your philosophy and to avoid being the teacher, who's defeated by any challenge, talking about logistics or the surrounding situation. I'm always proud of what we accomplished, what we have accomplished with Sevan's program, the community outreach program. Uh, we have pulled off many uh, stunning features in many different places where we went there with a plan, uh, considering projectors, um, uh, the use of electricity in general, sometimes or in many cases became an issue because they didn't have it. They didn't even have lighting. And so we said, okay, let's work outside. Let's do something different. Next time we should bring flashcards and so on. Um, so what I'm trying to say again is that considering that we're in a low resource setting, uh, and maybe you say, well, at Sevan we have light, we have projectors and so on, but things happen. Okay. And also when you are asking students to complete an assignment at home, remember where we are living in, and plan accordingly. And finally, what I would add here is how this connects to what we discussed on the importance of plans being flexible. This is why we have the very famous FODA, right? La matriz FODA, because we should take into account circumstances when we are planning and to avoid unwanted obstacles or inconvenient situations. So, moving forward after this reflection on low resource or this reflection on teaching on growth in low resource settings, I have this little line here saying integrated skills teaching is a mindset. And this is what I was mentioning about the importance of building the correct mentality and to be a teacher. Being a teacher is usually difficult. I don't even want to say challenging, because it's a tough job, and this is not a secret. Uh, but as in any other tough situation, the first step to be successful is building the correct mindset. So more than methods here with integrated skills teaching, we're looking at a mindset that should be part of the bigger mindset we are trying to build in these first three parts of our course. You will notice next Monday that uh, things will be more practical moving on. So for now, mindset. And then this mindset is about designing tasks that reflect how language actually lives in the world. Okay, you see me here moving things all the time because very I'm easily distracted by things. So let me, after showing you this slide from yesterday, move on to something new because I will show you now a very short list of practical strategies for integrated skills. But remember what I always say when I show you this kind of list of recommended practices or strategies. This is just for the example, okay? To give you an example, then you can just go online and do your research. You can take your notes of the ideas you get, or even asking your colleagues. I always go to Miguel in this case, like, hey, what do you think about this? I was thinking of doing something like this. Well, you can ask Miguel, especially because one very important word here in teaching integrated skills is enhancement. And this is a word that probably talking to Miguel, you have heard before talking about how uh, this work connects to what we are doing in the classroom. So again, this is a list. This is a list of examples, but you can probably find many, many more. There are many books written on the topic for with recommendations and practical strategies. First strategy, design with purpose. Uh, I think that we are no strangers to this right now because this is one way or another. We have mentioned this several times related to when we were talking about making activities meaningful, promoting self-efficacy, and active learning. Yes, this is all connected. When we talk about design with purpose, we mean start from a real world task, not a grammar point. I know this may sound weird because I even do it myself, but usually when we are planning a special activity or something to enhance a topic, normally we think of grammar. Like, okay, we need to practice present simple. What do we do? Or these guys are struggling with the mixed conditionals. What can we do to practice? And as I said, this is something I even do myself. It is normal. There's no shame. But the important part is that if you look at it the other way around, it is easier. And this is something we will mention again in a few minutes, okay? Uh, because you say, why? You're designing with a purpose, but you are thinking about the task, not the target. How's that working? Well, we will see. Another recommendation talking about designing with purpose, keep a clear communicative goal at the center. Even if you skip the first one and you start planning your activity thinking of your language target or your grammar point, remember the whole point is how to make it communicative. Because the more communicative it is, the more aligned you are with SEBAM's guidelines. But keeping in mind that SEBAM guidelines are not just because. Our guidelines are based, as you have seen throughout the week, they are based on research, they are based on a mindset, an institutional culture that has been uh, built for decades now, like 3 decades to be more specific. So remember, communication. We're aiming for language being used to learn the language, developing the language by using it. Next, we have the use of multiple modes of input. Probably you remember what we talked about, universal design for learners and the other things I said before, self-efficacy and all of this. Well, combine text, audio, visuals, and interaction. Avoid making your classes uh, all the same. Every day you just sit, you go through the slides. Questions? No, bye-bye. See you tomorrow. The slides include all of them, of course, but the point here is giving you the knowledge and the tools to make the situation better, to make the most out of the slides, for example. And then you say, okay, in the slides, you saw text, you read, you had listenings, and blah, 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 blah. But what kind of interaction, which is probably the most important here? What kind of interaction are you looking at here? Are students interacting with each other, or are they just answering my questions or the questions they are presented in the slide? Let learners accent meaning in more than one way, which is basically another way to say the same thing. Um, this is also part of the 3 principles of universal design for learners and connected to what I have just mentioned. So I won't repeat myself. We're talking about including speaking and or writing that feels purposeful. This is why the textbook, the materials we have at SEBAM usually have activities like writing an opinion or talking or writing or speaking about your own life or your activities, um, or writing a review, for example. Yesterday, Maria Alejandra was one of our Maria Alejandras was talking about how the students change when the conversation takes the direction of their interest. Their interest become the topic, and yeah, that's normal, and this is why the practice is recommended. Um, Make the output something learners will actually produce again in real life. And probably this is why one of the biggest issues with writing in Venezuela, I don't know how that's working now, but I remember when I was a kid, and this is something I have heard from many people, uh, one common writing activity in primary school was copying. You were given a book, a short story, or some content from Spanish or history, geography, and the task was to copy what you saw there and just literally writing it in your notebook. Um, I don't know how you can fall in love with writing by doing this kind of activity. And if we are not making it, again, purposeful and useful, uh, it's probably going to be wasted time. Um, so moving on to the next slide, we have for this another practical strategy is what we said about self-efficacy and motivation. Offer them choices, give them choices on what on the topics they will discuss the formats, the roles. A very common situation at SEBAM where we can see this uh, is when we have debates or well, those teachers who like debates. I personally, I think if I have planned like 4 or 5 debates during my time at Sevan, which is a bit long by now, uh, like 8 years or so, um, is letting them choose the topic. And this is very common. This is a very frequent practice. We mentioned Eduardo the other day, and he's a big fan of debates, and he can tell you how that particular case works. But the important is the essence, which is giving them choices. Talking about this, I could give you another example. When there are micro teaching sessions, I would personally say I used to be a big fan of them when I started teaching. Now it is not that I don't like them, but I believe now they should be handled with care because if they are not planned properly, you risk the chance of overwhelming them because in the end students are not teachers. They are, most of them don't have experience speaking in public. That's already an issue. Another issue is when the topics are not chosen by them, or even if the topics were chosen by them, they are not really familiar, or they just did it because they thought it would be a good idea. They can get stuck. Also, they need time to get ready. Not like, okay, tomorrow you will talk about conditionals. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I say that's something that requires planning, and that planning should include proper time for them to get ready for a situation that is taking them out of their comfort zone in a kind of a drastic way. So yes, so leaving them a choice is a very good idea. It's a recommended strategy for integrating skills. For example, in these cases, I told you the debate. Usually, to participate in a debate, or the point is that you should be prepared to defend an argument. So is this a very flexible debate? They already know the topic, for instance, so they don't need preparation. But what happens is if they voted for a topic, but then the situation is a little bit more complex. Do you need more structured planning or a more structured preparation? For instance, letting them uh, do research in the classroom with their cell phones? Uh, or do they need to practice? Do they need a review on connectors to know how to introduce certain ideas? These are the things to keep in mind. And then again, this is how you notice that even when you're offering them choices, you are in charge of the activity because you are the one setting. Well, that's a good way to put it, I think. You are the one setting the situation to be effective. Okay. Uh, but of course, this increases engagement and ownership as long as they are not overwhelmed by their own decisions. Um, I have seen people, for example, in guided discussions where students are the ones guiding the discussion. They choose the topic, it's even their topic, and not even that is a guarantee for you that it will go as expected. Okay, so there's you need to keep you always need to keep an eye on what's happening. That's our role. Then we have a scaffold strategically. Remember, scaffolding is providing specific, targeted, temporary support to students. Why do I say temporary? Todos sabemos lo que es una muletilla. We don't want to, to make this specific support something permanent, because then when is the student going to remember the I+1 from yesterday? When is the student going to become independent? So this is why the scaffolding part includes the temporary aspect. So what about scaffolding? What about providing strategic support? Well, including models, sentence starters, for example, visuals, information organizers, mind maps. I don't really like them, but they can be very effective. Uh, there are many ways you can organize information visually. And you see all of this is connected, because in the end, this is taking us back to the recommendation we saw before of using different types of input. Um, Another thing here is to give them support without reducing cognitive demand. Basically, what I was just mentioning, remembering the I+1 crash and propose means putting the student in a situation where he's facing cognitive demand without that demand being too much to handle. Uh, and the other way around, if you are using or giving scaffolding that is not the best, which is not appropriately targeted or targeting what you want to support, it can be too easy for them. You're basically completing the task for them. Then we have keep skills connected. That's kind of obvious, but remember, in the end, this is what we're aiming for. Using more than one skill isolated is one the more isolated skill. Ensure reading leads to speaking. This is exactly what I prepared the slides, of course, but this is exactly what I was thinking. When you're reading, okay, you finish, guys? Yes. Okay, let's move on. This is low. Okay, what's the point? You don't know if all of them read, for instance. You don't know if those who read understood the text. You didn't check if there were new words. Uh, you didn't show interest in their understanding. So if it leads to speaking, and this is why usually in reading exercises, in materials, you see how there are usually follow-up questions. What was the main idea, or what meaning was the author trying to convey, or what is the author trying to say about this? Uh, but then you can come up with your own ideas. For example, what I said about vocabulary, and you don't even need to be so straightforward. You can just ask if there is anything that needs clarification, or you directly, if you know there are words there that might be complicated, just go and talk about the word, like, hey, by the way, this means whatever, or blah, 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 without making that scaffolding, uh, doing or completing the activity for them. And next, oh, by the way, talking about vocabulary and reading, just as a side note, remember, if you are not sure about the vocabulary you have in the material you are trying to use, remember you can look for it. You can go to your web browser, or you can ask Gemini, or you can ask ChatGPT. I don't really trust ChatGPT anymore. I was never a big fan or a big user, but now after so many news talking about lying and manipulating, uh, I well, the thing is, you can just go and look for the word and ask if the word is appropriate for the level according to the Common European Framework of Reference. That exists. This is just in case. And then if you're producing your own reading materials, this is something you can keep in mind. Or you can just go to the slides and do what they have read or learned before, and use them to create your own texts or dialogues, even if you're using a voice production tool. Then listening leads to writing, the same idea. If the four of them are connected, that's even better. That's the more skills you are using in your task, the better from the integrated skills point of view, and the better for the communicative language teaching approach we are trying to use here. Okay, finally, this is the summary for all of this. Input and output feed each other naturally. That's the bottom line here. If you are receiving audio, you can produce audio, you can speak, but also it is okay if you have a written assignment, taking notes, comparing notes, and so on. Thank you, Maria, and for your support. But now it's time to practice, okay? This is a very simple exercise we have here. Um, According to the picture, you see, I rarely use pictures, but you can imagine here that's intentional because this is for you to move your attention there, to focus on this. And you already get clues, right? Um, So if we are talking about practice and we're talking or we are seeing two people with a suitcase with backpacks, maps, cameras. Uh, if you're too young, yes, this is a camera. What's the point here? Let's see. We are going to plan a weekend trip. Okay, this is just an exercise here, a sample activity. Um, I'm going to give you a moment to consider the following two questions. Okay, the first one is, again, we have the subject, or let's say we have the scenario. That's the word. We have the scenario. You are with your students, or your students are planning a weekend trip. How would the activity, not the weekend trip, I'm talking about the task. What would be the task if the scenario is planning a weekend trip? And based on that, what skills would be integrated? So I'm going to mute myself for a moment so you can think about it. Don't make it too uh, detailed. Okay, you can uh, type a word or two in the chat to say what you think or how this activity would be regarding skill integration and the task itself. Okay, we have good information already. We have a couple of ideas in the chat. Pierina says, making a timeline with drawings. I think that's a great idea. I don't know if anybody thinks the same, but I think this is a great idea because you are using multimodality, right? And you're trying to get the students' attention by, well, the drawing itself, it has more than one benefit in a classroom with children. And then the timeline gets this sense of organization and sequence. For us, in this case, talking about the language itself, we're sequencing events, and we know that can even be connected. talking about challenge, depending on the level. We can be talking about the use of different tenses, the use of connectors, and so on. Maria is talking about Easter because, well, Easter is coming at the end of March. Family visit, going to the beach, so activities, and then we are touching here on content based, right? This can you see how everything is connected here. This is another great idea. I would probably, says Osmel, tell them to come up with a dialogue where they have to use going to and will as main tenses, knowing the differences. So this is directly asking them to you already we already have the language target. And I mean in conversation. Yes, this is great. This is a great idea, Osmel. But I'm gonna use it. This is not for offense, okay? But this is a good example of what I was saying before of thinking about an activity first the task or the language target. And this is something, as I said, that is very common. Like we see it, the task as an activity to practice. Like it is not the end in itself, but uh, a means to reach the practice, the grammar practice. We will go back to this, don't worry. Speaking, for example, talking about planning the weekend, I decided to include some skills because I imagined you were going to focus either on the language target or the task. Talking about skills, this is more like the way we should put it into words. Um, Talking about the future, discussing plans. You see, and this is why materials use this kind of vocabulary. Negotiating, expressing preferences, interpreting partners' ideas, responding appropriately. And you see, maybe if you have this kind of understanding on planning objectives, this situation can be a little confusing because we are concentrating here on the task. But if you're trying to include an objective, that falls into assessment. And you say, how can you assess interpretation, for example? So we get to what verbs to use to make assessment valid, to make the assessment valid and reliable. Like understand, well, that's a complex verb to assess, right? The student uses, the student identifies. This is just a side note here. Remember here, however, the important part is the task and what we can accomplish with the task in a more practical sense. Then talking about writing, jotting down an itinerary. You see, this is kind of close to what Pierina was mentioning, creating a short travel blog or a message. And this is also kind of going back to what well, listening actually was what Osmel was mentioning. And writing, I think, is closer to Pierina's and Maria's ideas. And reading, scanning brochures, maps, or sample text for ideas. Yes, Miguel.
I just want to mention something we mentioned yesterday, but for those who are not in the live session or the on-site sessions, remember that the language objective is the goal we have to accomplish in an institution like ours, and all the task-based activities or additional activities should allow us to put that language content in practice, but not the outcome of the task-based activity or project is the outcome to assess. I I sorry to interrupt this because it is important knowing the difference between what we need to accomplish and what are we actually accomplishing. And yesterday I gave an example of presentations where kids are nervous or students are nervous and they stuck because they try to cram some information that's not connected to them. So what are we assessing? Their capacity to use the language or their capacity to repeat consciously repeat information they're not gonna use after that presentation. So we have to understand that all these activities should align the objects. That's our guideline. That's our framework to accomplish language goals. But whatever outcome comes from that is accepted as long as it aligns the language objectives. Thank you.
All right. That being said, we can move on to the next part here. Possible enhancements, as I said. Usually a very, or in general, a very useful tool to do this. Miguel was talking about, well, thinking about the task, what they are supposed to accomplish or to do with their activity, is thinking about possible enhancements. Because, as I said, and this is not because they were wrong, this is just because we're brainstorming here. We are writing and we're jotting down our ideas. But for example, after what I've been saying here, what I showed you, and you guys thinking about your own ideas with more time, can go back to the timeline idea, the planning idea, the conversation idea from Osmel, and think about possible enhancements. And probably this is when you start building a more integral activity, something that involves more the use of all the skills. And typical solid recommendation for this is, adding a reading input, talking about this particular scenario, the scenario of planning the trip. Learners read a short travel blog or review before planning. See, you are already reading, and this is probably connected to a discussion, and the discussion probably takes you or leads you to writing. Then, talking about writing, let's write a group itinerary or persuasive message to a friend who doesn't want to go, for instance. But you see, taking this first one, adding reading input, uh, you are already enhancing it when you say, well, after this, they can have a conversation. After the conversation, they write down their own ideas, um, and so on. And you see, this is again thinking about tasks, not giving all your attention to the language target. In the end, the important part, as Miguel said, is seeing how the language is being used in a practical, effective, uh, communicative way that resembles what they would do in a real life setting or a real life situation. Then another possibility, if you think the activity might not be challenging enough, that's not a problem. Maybe the scenario can work for many things. But in any case, you can. I when I was introducing this point here in the slide, I remember an activity Miguel has talking about Sevan's outreach program of finances for teenagers. And this is, well, it has tasks, it has a very practical approach, of course, but then this is the kind of thing that makes the activity even more engaging, uh, because it is about problem solving, basically. Um, and you would be happy, or you would have been happy to see how the activity in very unusual or unexpected situations became even a competition, because participants really wanted to reach their goal and show Miguel and show everybody there they were the best at managing the budget, or overcoming the budget limits. But in this case, you can imagine how this would become part of the activity, I guess. Weather conditions, maybe when they're planning the trip, this is not just about, okay, we're going here, but you have different options of where you can go or the places you can visit, but then you need to take weather conditions into account. Travel restrictions, I remember, I think this is in one of the awesome books, I'm not sure, that refers to travel restrictions, or was it in Up Close? I don't really remember now. But when they mentioned in a mini project, in a class, in an in-class project, uh, when you in the checklist, on the checklist, they said, do you need a visa to enter the country. And I remember, uh, I think I used the activity once, and because of the situation in Venezuela, we have these, or most people, well, I wouldn't say most, I think many people have this awareness of, consular requirements and immigration requirements. So, this again, in a few words, this is to spark problem solving. Problem solving is great as a cognitive demand and as an engagement resource or a strategy. So finally, for this very short exercise, which is just a way to see how this works, I wanted to show you what teaching approaches are related to this. And just as a question for you, because I think it is quite simple, but can you see how this exercise aligns with one of the approaches we have discussed or not? If so, which one? Okay, if not, I can just show you. Of course, our protagonist here is CLT. We are giving our attention here. We're focusing the activity on real world interaction and negotiation of meaning in a word here. Uh, I don't know what your meaning, Gerina. What do you mean? This case is not the option. What do you mean? Okay, what I can say about adapting activities to approaches. Um, okay, Maria, I already read your comment, Osmel. Maria, please.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I think that the community language teaching approach is applied because a student start thinking about what they are planning on this activity, like planning a trip or telling about a past experience. Yes, according to the timeline, there's thinking about what is your background, what happened, or what would be your perfect travel. So I think that's ground our feet because we are talking about ourselves. Uh, I think that IBT is when we start to complete different tasks on it when we are practicing each skill. The goal is to attain the integrated skill approach. When we start to listening to a recording, completing, for example, writing a brochure, or yes, we are listening our partners sharing their travel experience. Each step is about IBT approach, I think about. And finally, the other approach that you talked about last Tuesday was when the students complete the project. A project like, for example, planning a community project. I, let me imagine something. For example, a community planning on provide information how to attend a customer from different Venezuelan states that visit in Mérida, whether in Las Heroínas or Cormetur or different touristic points that the students can develop a project. I don't remember CTL, IBT, and the last one I didn't remember the approach. But I think that it could be the different stage to practice integrated skills in this topic, for example. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Maria. I agree with you, and I think now I understand what Pierina was saying. And to go first to Pierina's Solina comment, I think, yeah, every activity, well, almost, well, saying every activity, it sounds like I already have research on it, and that's not the case, of course, but I think that in general, or usually, activities might be adapted. But I think that more than adapting an activity to an approach, um, because that may sound like too technical or too forced. It's what Miguel said of thinking about things they can do. And then I think this is also kind of what Maria was trying to say, I think, how the way you perceive activities or the tasks they are supposed to complete, if you think that way, based on the integrated skills approach, probably you are moving or you're aiming or you're basically working on a CLT approach, a community language learning approach, and anything that has communication and interaction as the purpose, the center of attention. So yes, I think basically all three, the three of you said what I was hoping to hear. This is definitely task-based. This is community learning. This is CLT, and this is adaptation to make it communicative. So absolutely. This is actually the next one was task-based, and I think, or I thought when I was working on the slides that to avoid this confusion, because remember what we are, according to the post-method era, which is the mindset we're trying to keep here, is we are basing our teaching more than in an approach or a method on certain specific ideas. The thing is, the idea is also the foundation of CLT, teaching the language by putting the students in situations where they use it in a real life kind of way. And this includes using TBL, TBLT, CBI, project-based. But in the end, it all summarizes in using a learner-centered pedagogy, putting students in a situation where they are the ones doing the heavy lifting after we have planned, of course, because the heavy lifting, the real heavy lifting here, and this is yes, because I'm a teacher and because you are teachers, and I need to praise the work we do. The heavy lifting in education is usually done by the teacher, by the planner. And then the other part is, of course, on the students, the ones taking this situation to make it a benefit for them, to make it beneficial for them. So yeah, thank you guys for your comments. Now I'm going to show you this very quickly. Okay, your turn designing an integrated activity. I'm going to give you some minutes. This is the scenario. You see, the first one was planning a trip. This time is planning a class event. I don't know. There are many possible class events. It can be something related to culture. It can be something related to a holiday. It can be any kind of class event you know, or you have seen, or you can think of. Okay, so this is open, but the scenario is that you're planning or your students are planning a class event. So there you have some extra information. Your school wants to organize a small class event. And then again, you have there some suggestions. A mini fair, a
I
game
have a
hour.
question.
Yes.
Does it need to include a specific, I don't know, topic of English, such as, I don't know, verbal times or whatever? And the other question I have about event, uh, about a class event, nothing comes to mind, but events in general, I don't know, maybe like a graduation, for example, or a
Oh no, no,
trial, I
that's
don't
too
know.
much. We should keep it to a 1 day activity. For example, I can think of now a cultural day like St. Patrick's, for example. Um, and that would be for question to make it something a one time occasion, something simple, not as big as a graduation ceremony, but as it says there, like St. Patrick's celebration, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Day, or something like this. And talking about the first question, that's interesting because your question is basically regarding the use of content-based instruction, because I can tell you, you can use any event you want, but keeping in mind we're in an EFL context. We're teaching English to students who have the language as a foreign language. When you see my automatic reference were a couple of American celebrations, because in that case the content is connected to what I am trying to make students be more familiar with. Uh, but you can choose the one you prefer as long as you are able to frame it as a useful activity for an EFL context. Uh, do you understand? Did I answer your
Um,
questions?
yeah, I think I understand better.
So think of
Thank
a
you.
holiday or a situation. Think of a task they can complete. About an event, a class event related to that celebration or that event, and then think of possible language targets if you want, what they may be using in that context if you want. All right. Then students, I'm giving you a little bit more information about the scenario. Students must work together to decide. You see what we were talking, what the event will be, what activities it will include, what materials they need, very important, and how to invite others or promote it. I think we have many examples of this at SEVAM. Um, yeah, we have many of them. Even the invitations, if you want to make it this like a wider scope event, but if you want to keep it in your classroom, that's perfectly fine. Or if you want to promote it, but this one, again, this is all optional because you are basically brainstorming. We will not be here in the activity spending 30 minutes. This is for you to start working on an idea, following the model we just saw. So again, think of a situation, a holiday, a season. Think of a way to approach or to address the situation as an event. Uh, Thinking about a class event. And well, there you have it. What do we have next? We have the scenario. This is what you will do, or what you will actually be doing. You're individually now, each one of you, you're going to sketch. Again, as I said, this is like brainstorming. Think of a holiday. This is like the fourth time I repeat myself. A holiday, a celebration, something you can use in your EFO classroom as an integrated skills activity. Think of what task they will be completing as the class event happens. Remember, we saw the planning a trip. And then thinking about the task, consider what could students read to complete that task. What could they listen to, like a podcast, can they watch a video, for example? What conversations or decisions would they make? Because remember, problem solving should be an important aspect of this. And what could they produce at the end? Okay, we already have an answer. I didn't tell you to share it, but we can keep it there because we are going to do something later on. Making a paradura in English, or planning a paradura, or discussing paraduras in English, working group to translate prayings. I don't know about translating prayers, but this is personal because I really think translation is something we need to handle with care in the classroom, especially if this is so complex as translating prayers. I think songs might be a good idea, but then again, this is not, I wasn't supposed to be discussing this. The point, as you see, Pierina already has her quick sketch. What she did is what all of you need to do now. Take a moment, think of a situation, think of a possible task, and what kind of or how the skills we are talking about would be included in the task. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to turn off my camera for 3-4 minutes now. Then I'll show you what's next in the activity. If you have any questions, of course, you can ask. Okay, guys. As I said, it is not necessary to share anything with me right now. I hope you have some notes there, some ideas of how your class event. We already know that Pierina proposed talking about paraduras or planning a paradura. Um, yes, I think in Venezuela that would be an issue, but just as a cultural note, the importance of the context, you can imagine that having something like this in the US would be something to handle with care. Um, but in Venezuela, again, I think we said yesterday this about specific about um, the use of social emotional learning that it can work in a way probably in the US or in certain parts on certain classrooms in the US, but it probably would work in a different way in Venezuela. This is another one of those cases to see that the setting is essential. It should be always being considered. It should always be considered. Sorry. Then, with your notes, this is what we're going to do now. You're going to build together. I'm going to give you more time now, of course, because working in a group is when you have to negotiate and reach agreements is more difficult. Let's build together what will we do now? You're going to create a joint lesson idea. So what we did here basically was to give you individual space to brainstorm ideas for an integrated skills activity. Um, so now you're going to take these individuals brainstorming to work as a group. There is a comment here in the chat. Sport day or talent show where students are able to show, blah, 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 blah. Okay, thank you. There you have Osmel's proposal. But now the thing is, I will mute myself again. I will turn off my camera again because I'm going to give you the floor here so you can open your microphones and discuss what a joint activity would be. You already have two proposals. Those of you who haven't shared it, don't worry. You can do it as soon as I turn off my camera and my microphone. Uh, then what are you going to share afterwards? You're going to share the plan with me, the plan we saw before, okay? So you're gonna tell me what two of you were sharing in the chat. You're gonna tell me and Miguel and the rest. The thing is that the rest now are one single group. Maria, Pierina, Osmond, you are now in the same group. You will prepare the activity. You will choose one of your scenarios. You will work on the activities. You remember what I showed you before with the enhancement. This is a good way to put it into words. Like step one, they do this. Step two, they do this. Step three, they do this. So in the end, they have this. You see, there you have Maria's contribution. So now this is not choosing one, okay? Be careful. This is not choosing, okay, Maria's plan. No, if you're choosing Maria's idea, now you need to make it your whole idea for everybody. So it shouldn't be just Maria's proposal, but then you can see how you can shape Maria's proposal to represent what all of you would do in that kind of situation. Let's see how you can reach agreements then. Uh, and then you have around 10 minutes to work on it. I will disappear again for 10 minutes. If you have any questions, you can ask either ways. I'll be here. So again, open your microphones and get to talk there. No worries.
I'm not talking because I am reading the proposals. So I'm reading them.
Me too. I'm reading them.
I like the sport day. That's a very dynamic idea. I think that ultimate project, yes, I will choose that.
Yeah, I like it too, and we could make it like this contest, like Sebam's Got
Mhm.
Talent, such as like America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. I think it that show is like that. So yeah, make it, we can make it Sebam's Got Talent, and we can
Mhm.
have a jury. We could have the host and the participants.
Mhm.
I don't know, Osma, what do you think?
Yeah, basically that was my inspiration's source.
Yeah, exactly. I really like it. So maybe it could be divided into groups, into equal groups, and make the scripts for the host, maybe for the jury, and make also a script for the presentation of the participants. Like, my name is, I am uh, whatever years old, my talent is, and I hope you like it. And then you can make the presentation of your talent.
Yeah, even the teacher might be the host.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think as a integrated skill project, maybe yes. I would add at the beginning maybe a short reading or uh, f- about a bio on participant that is reading skills. After that, it could be the presentation or the yes, how the student demonstrate their gift. Maybe I don't know where is the listening component. How we can add this component.
Um,
Uh,
Yeah,
I
I
have
was
an
thinking
idea.
about. Okay.
Maybe you can kind of like, do you know in this the well talent shows where it's not only the jury that says hello, show us your talent, and then the participant does this
oh,
their thing, but in the show, in the TV show, they
okay.
show like a small story of their life. So
Ah,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
so yeah, you can
But,
include that.
I don't
Not
know, like
only
we have
like
to take, yeah, we have to
yes.
take into account that the activity is just to be developed in the classroom, or they could have more days out of the classrooms, because that means they be required to do it at home, like the video, right?
No, not a
Mhm.
video. You can like make your script of your own life. For example, I'm a
Okay,
student and I'm not a participant, and I make a script of my life so he can read it himself or a host
Yes,
could read it.
reading and
And
listening. Yes,
yeah, and it would include that part of listening and speaking and everything of
okay,
that. And it's like the TV show where they show the story of their lives. Like they grew up
okay.
in a farm, their
Now I
family.
get it. Okay, it's like kind of the bio that Maria just said, where they can
Mhm,
talk a little bit about their background, their life, and
mhm.
Yeah,
how they started, or how they found this talent, and using some English tenses to do that, especially in the past.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I think yes, and that's interactive. Um, while the jury start to make questions and also answering any audience yes question. I think that that is the interactive component into this project.
Yes,
Okay,
I
now
like it.
yeah. So I don't know who's going to write information in the chat.
So I can start doing. So there is a
Okay.
talent show. Okay, talent Sevans or talent show in the Sevan. I don't know.
Sevan's
Maybe
got that.
Sebam's Got Talent.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Sevans or okay,
It's not that creative or original, but it's okay.
So
I hope
I
we don't get copyright demands or lawsuits.
Yeah.
oh I have a trouble here. Maybe yes, that is freeze my screen. I cannot type. No,
Pirina,
Pierina, please. Yes, I hope that I'm going to
Yes.
again to this.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
Sebam's
got
Got
talent.
Talent. The host, maybe we can say participants. Host.
Here again.
Hi again.
How can you say okay? Contestants.
How could you say?
No, I was trying to remember the word for contestants.
Like contest or competition.
Contest. Yeah.
Yeah, contest. Bless you.
So
Oh, thank you.
they
I
what
thought my
is that?
microphone was off.
And the students have this, let's say, pre-write like the script before the presentation, so they can talk a little bit about their lives and, well, especially their talents. You know, this is a matter of talent.
I said that before. The event.
Before, yeah,
And
before. So that is the part of the listening for the other classmates.
yes, I agree. Mm.
What do you think about it like this?
Okay, so it's got talent, participants, host, jury, contestants must take script.
Mm.
Yeah, and also remember the writing part. Maybe it could be like at the end of the session, students can write about what they like the most of the other classmates' talents and gift.
That's a good idea. Also, to vote the best vote to your favorite contestant and say why.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that yesterday Mr. Ember talked about this labeling the students, and but well, nowadays like almost everything can take as a label. So this was
Uh,
the best. Yeah,
okay.
you know.
Yeah,
But
I know.
I mean, I like because that is part of the competition. That is part of the engagement and this spirit, this hunger of being the best. But I don't know
Mhm.
because nowadays it's like a glass generation.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes, we can still say uh, yes, prevent any misunderstanding. That is better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes, especially when we are make teaching comparative or superlative, I realize that they tend to be really competitive, but at the same time they get down. I mean, they turn down if they don't win or something like that.
Okay, guys, are you almost done? I hope.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Are you ready, guys?
Yeah, I I don't know what happened to the girls.
Okay. So, well, I wanted to ask Miguel.
Oh, sorry. It's almost time for work, so I was final finishing to get ready. I might have to leave the meeting
Yeah.
in a moment, but don't worry, not yet.
Okay. So I wanted to ask Miguel what you think about what happened here, the guys planning the event and the event itself. I think it sounds at least interesting. What do you think, Miguel?
Yeah, it was a great idea. And since we are actually engaged with the arts, I think it would be actually a good one to make through the Juan Carlos can work on that. The Savants got talent. Well, we used to have students promoting their arts, and they wanted to just to show what they do. And last time I remember We planned the Halloween activities, and there were students showing their rock outfits. So they had some bands and uh, and solo artists performing. So this Sevan's Got Talent idea is a good one to make. I think we could make it.
Yeah, the idea has future, has a
It has strong potential.
yeah, there is a future there. So guys, while you are finishing there your summary, I wanted to have a kind of a discussion, but I think you were already answering this in your own conversation. Um, and then probably I can just mention these two last bullet points here. It was interesting to hear the process, and that's pretty much one of the purposes of having the exercise done like this. There is no single right way to design an integrated task, and I think in general, building a community with your colleagues is very important. Like you can even come up or build like a microculture in which you end up sharing values, practices, and beliefs in regarding teaching, of course, and that usually is a good foundation for better teamwork, and as a consequence, for better teaching practices. And why? Because each teacher brings unique judgment, creativity, and experience. And even though I'm talking here about the possibility of you guys becoming a unified group of colleagues or a team, in the end, each of you has a personality and beliefs, and then the thing is how they merge in your professional practice to make it smoother and to create this culture of collaboration and exchange and like a good team should work. um, and then of course this also happens, and I think you probably, if you go back to what you were discussing, I think it was a very smooth conversation. It was, you didn't take a lot of negotiation. It wasn't that necessary, but also I noticed how some of the ideas were not dismissed, but refined, or you even got like a better consideration of that idea. So moving forward, we still have, oh, we have 10 minutes to finish. So again, as you were discussing, probably, oh, sorry, this is something you probably noticed. Integrated tasks are flexible and adaptable, and this is the one big benefit of thinking about the task before thinking about the grammar. You see, you were thinking the skills, how what they could read here. You were talking about creating some video presentations for them. As in, I think it's in American Idol. I'm not sure because I'm not. That's not the kind of content I like. But I think it's American Idol where they used to. Or I don't know if that's still going on. It's happening at this moment. I don't know if they have new season or anything. But I think they used to have this kind of video presenting to introduce themselves. Um, or it was a the X factor, well, whatever. The important part is this. I'm missing the point. The important part is you were showing there why or how integrated um, tasks are flexible and adaptable, and of course useful in the end. Your professional judgment is central, of course, and this is one of the foundations of the post-method era. Remember, the more you know about methods and approaches, about strategies, about philosophies, about values, if you want, in your teaching, your judgment is better. Knowledge is power, and this is a great example of that. Then sharing ideas expands what's possible, because two heads are better than one when it comes to thinking and so on. And integration is about authenticity, not complexity. You see, you were just looking for new ways, or but the whole idea was new. So where you were when you were or while you were looking for ways to integrate skills. You were thinking of new ways of integrating activities in a certain task. So kudos. Thank you for your work. And that means we're moving on to the final slide for today. There will be something left there, but I think I was thinking here, of course, I gave you more time than expected. But then I was thinking here that it will be a good idea to have that on Monday and basically concentrate on Monday on that thing we will be leaving out today. So let me move on to today's final things, which are some examples of integration. This is just to build on what you were doing. You were talking about dialogues, about introductions, about recording videos, and so on. Some other examples of skill chaining. This is what we did in the let's practice slide. Like, okay, first they read, then they discuss, then they write. That's a very common approach, an example. I think the best example of integration to make it very practical. And then you have a literal example, listening to a podcast, followed by discussing the key points of the presented in the podcast, and then writing a summary. Genre-based, use real-world text and require multiple skills, like a restaurant review. Then you write your own and you present it orally. You maybe in this case you are the one recording a podcast as a food expert, like a foodie. Project-based, of course, is, as we said a couple of days ago, well, more than a couple of days ago. Uh, Project-based offers like the best opportunities for you to integrate skills because you have different tasks that are headed to the same goal, and that it makes it possible for you to use your creativity to come up with different input and output modalities for your students while they're using their four skills in realistic and real life forms. Then we have the example, plan a community event. You are going to create flyers to invite people for the event. And you see, this is only one aspect of a possible project because if you have a community event, maybe you want to think of activities people will join there. You're thinking here about advertising the event. You're thinking about many things depending on how big the project is. Because the one you were discussing just now, for instance, you already have the goal, which is, well, kind of the goal like presenting or allowing the students to use the space to present their talents. But then you are thinking about how to get them from point A to point B or to the end. And that's also good to notice or good to reflect on how the important part is the process, not the goal. Of course, the final event with Juan Carlos would look great, would be excellent. You know, having these guys there singing, playing an instrument, or whatever, that looks great. But the important aspect comes first, comes before. How you get them to be there in an organized and useful setting. Another one, this is simpler than the project-based learning thing, information gaps and jigsaw tasks. We discussed this as well in the past. This is the jigsaw thing is maybe you have a single unified topic, but then each student reads or brings a different article on the topic. Then they share and they build something together as for example, a group report. And then, of course, scaffolded output is input and reading, listening. You are using two skills, and then the output is one or the other. Of course, offering output by reading is a little of a complex idea. So finally, read a model email, analyze, structure, and read and write your own. Okay, so where time is running, we're running out of time for today, so I will stop sharing here. I will stop recording here so we can start saying goodbye for today.